Hello, good evening, welcome. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You're on Damn Radio, and I'm very glad to have you. Damn glad to have you, some people would say. Without the N, remember, we don't go swearing around here. We're very well behaved tonight, generally well behaved all the time. Well, let's not go too far out of line there. I'm generally pretty well behaved. Uh, But let's offer you the opportunity to call in tonight and discuss whatever you feel like with me. I have plenty to discuss and go over with, but go over with you. And I, you know, am happy to do so, but I will happily take phone calls at 573-746-8020. And I look forward to hearing from you if you do call. Just so you know, I'm not one of those people that doesn't want to talk to you. Um, I want to start tonight. I of course, am very seriously interested in what is going on around the world and the silence of America and the silence, especially of the Trump administration about Ukraine is and what they have been doing, becoming a terrorist state, if they weren't one already. They're in death throes, basically. And so if let's put it this way: if a shark grabs you in the water, shark grabs you, takes you down, what are you going to do? You one of those people just going to lay there and take it? Are you going to fight back with the most power you ever had, even knowing that you're probably going to lose? You're being chased by a bear. What's going to happen? That you're gonna fight till the end, and it'll be pretty quick. One of the stories that this is a sideline. This is what they call the famous Samuel Trapp sideline. I always think of something and get to tell a story. I was watching some I don't know, some YouTube video or another, and this was months and months ago, but some things I just can't get out of my head. And one of them, I was thinking of something exactly like that. Foolish people. That here was a guy went out to Yellowstone National Park all by himself and went out. He's a photographer, so he's out taking photos. And across this huge prairie, he sees a grizzly bear and a couple of cubs, and goes over there and inches closer and closer, taking pictures of the grizzly. He was still fairly far away, and at some point, at least the evidence from the videos shows that at some point this bear took interest in him and began to cross the prairie toward him. And needless to say, the guy disappeared. They found him in parts elsewhere, but his camera was left behind because apparently the bear didn't know how to use it. And there was plenty of photos of him taking photos up until but I guarantee you that guy was either running his ass off at the end or fighting for his last right there. And I say that because that's just nature. That's what people do. That's what animals do. It's what everyone does. And when you're overwhelmed, that doesn't mean you don't fight. It's the rare person who just gives up and collapses. Most people fight for that last breath, fight for what it is they're going to do. I hope I go out with a fight, you know what I mean? When it's time to go. And at any rate, I truly believe that is what's happening now in Ukraine. They got nothing. They are in desperate, desperate straits. And so what do? You attack. And I gave kudos to them yesterday for what they accomplished and what they were able to do with that drone attack deep inside of Russia on their strategic bomber forces. There are some numbers that have come out that they have said that there were 8 aircraft lost. Ukrainians are still claiming 40. All over the West, you're hearing headlines that Russia's defense collapses. Russia's defense is exposed by Ukraine. Explosions rock the Crimean Bridge and underwater SBU strike. That was today's news because Russia. Now we have Zelensky actually coming out and threatening Russia and saying, we're going to keep on doing this until you give up. Meanwhile, they're losing ground every day. And the whole point of this sort of news and behavior is to take attention away from the fact that Ukraine is losing on the ground. If you want to claim that Russia and Russians do not understand what's at stake in their own country, trust me, they do. And they know what's happening. They know what's at stake. And they know the importance of this game. And they also know that they're in it for the long haul and for the victory. I heard another interesting thing, but let's listen first. And I hope I have it queued up properly and you'll hear it right. I think I do. But here's what Steve Bannon had to say after this. And, former Trump advisor, I think he went to prison for President Trump, didn't he? He went to prison as a result of what went on in the first term, or however that went. Nonsensical in my view, but that's what happened. Let us see. And it was a long discussion, everybody out there applauding Ukraine, and they were using this as a say, look at the crazies out there saying what Steve Bannon's saying. Here we go.
From the Ukrainians.
The White House has to condemn this immediately and pull all support and tell Lindsey Graham, come home. Or we're going to put you under arrest when you come home. You're stirring it up. Lindsey Graham's over there saying, hey, forget Trump. I got the House and the Senate. We're gonna pass him. You're going to see something in a couple of days. Remember that? He's stirring it up over there. He's telling me they got backing. If they did not give us a heads up on this, all full stop, no minerals deal, walk away from all of it. They're irresponsible. They're dragging us into a kinetic third world war. As we said, we're getting dragged in now. Or the deep state is driving us in there. Either of these are not good. Tulsi Gabbard's got to let us know. Did anyone in Intel at all have anything to do with this? Did anybody have a heads up? Did anybody? And if not, who the hell's running the Ukraine desk? Who's running the Russia desk? Same thing with Ratcliffe. This is why Cash and Bongino and Pam Bondi, you got to clear out the deep state. This is a ticking time bomb. And you see what they're going to get us into. Because now inexorably we're being drawn into this. If we didn't know about it, the president, to me, has got to condemn it and got to say we're not going to give any more support because these people cannot be trusted. You're supposed to be in Turkey today talking peace, not 3,000 miles into Russia blowing up their strategic bombers.
So what do you make of Bannon?
We're going to, I don't care about their response to it. I only wanted that cut of what he had to say because he's absolutely right. And they have people all over and remember, this is a propaganda war more than anything else. I've told you that Lindsey Graham was over there stirring the pot. Looks like Bannon agrees with me with what he said. Bannon is over there. Graham is over there saying exactly what Steve Bannon just said. Screw Trump. We've got you covered. We got more sanctions. We got more things coming for you. Well, we're gonna help you. We'll be there for you, Ukraine. We got your $38 billion that Zelensky is demanding from the West, and mainly from the U.S. And he knows the deep state has his back. He knows it. And if Trump doesn't come out with something soon, I'm losing hope that he will. Seriously, I thought that he would get there, but silence from him, silence from Rubio, silence about this attack, silence about the trains being blown up. I'm going to read you some propaganda from the Kiev Post here in a little bit. The Kiev Post is obviously Kiev is in Russia, in Ukraine, and so they've got some new things. And here's one from a long YouTube channel. And there's some this guy. I'm alarmed that people like this go out professing to be experts in foreign policy and Russian policy between Ukraine and Russia. But here's a guy who, in this explosive Kiev Post interview, and I listened to half of it, there's a guy named Chuck Farrer, Pfarrer, Navy SEAL Team 6, retired. Well, good for him, but he's a moron. He says, here's what he has to say. Jason J. Smart and former Navy SEAL Chuck Farrer break down Ukraine's largest drone strike of the war. Crippling, they're not crippled, crippling Russia's strategic air power in a single night and signaling a dramatic shift in the Ukraine-Russia war. Don't all hold your breath that a dramatic shift is a-coming. I think these guys are nuts. And this is exactly what the Lindsey Grahams of the world want you to believe. That because of a drone strike, and I've given the kudos already for a well-performed, well-performed operation that took out some Ukraine. And here I'm going to continue with the article. This is from the Kiev Post, like I said, and they copied most of it from these two Americans, continual Ukraine supporters. You'll never hear a word come out that is even remotely fair about what is going on in there. Okay, these are probably the guys that are over there selling their genius for $500 an hour that they're receiving from U.S. Agency for International Development. So if you're connected and you tell them what you want to hear, you'll get paid like a madman. But people like me, Jesus, I'd never be involved. I'd never get accepted into one of those because I wouldn't tell them what they wish to hear. Okay? And we know what they want to hear. They want to hear what Lindsey Graham is selling. Ukraine's deep strike drone operation targeted 5 Russian air bases, including Siberian and central facilities. The attack, and here's the big lie. The attack destroyed over 40 Russian bombers. Untrue, including 295s and it means Tupolev, it's the manufacturer, and 222M3 nuclear-capable aircraft, and even eliminated A-50 radar planes. It says A-50 radar planes, vital to Russia's early warning and air command capability. Okay, this unprecedented Ukrainian drone strike exposes critical weaknesses in Russian air defense and suggests that Russia's military, and I don't know where this suggestion comes from. How do you make this logical leap? This goes along the lines of I should go into a Monty Python. This she calls using her intuition. I call it crap, and it gets me very irritated because it is not logical. All wood burns, states for Bedivere. Therefore, he concludes that all that burns is wood. Anyway, I'm sorry. I shouldn't go there. This unprecedented strike blah blah blah, shows the weakness. And this sentence, get this unprecedented Ukrainian drone strike exposes critical weakness in Russian air defenses, and here's the important part, and suggests that Russia's military collapse is accelerating faster than anticipated. Now, where in the world does that sentence come from? Even given that the fact, let's say that fact is a given. Let's say that they took out 40 bombers. When Russia have you ever driven across Arizona? If anybody has driven across Arizona and there's a huge desert style area where you go out there, there is an extremely famous, and I don't remember the name of it, an aircraft graveyard, okay, where military and civilian aircraft go to die, and they park them there, or they're old, or they're whatever. Russia has several of these where they put bombers that may be out of date. And that doesn't mean they can't refurbish them and get them flying again. That doesn't mean that they're not even minimally kept up. It just means that they're no longer the greatest. I was listening to a Russian guy today who said that they have some 200 older style bombers, but bombers that can still deliver. Does anyone know what these glide bombs are? Does anyone know what they are? Okay, a glide bomb, and back when the Soviet Union and the U.S. were building up, and you may already know this, so I apologize to preach to you, but a glide bomb is an old dumb bomb, like the kind we use to bomb Nagasaki, with nuclear capable warhead. And it used to be that you just took these huge bombs and dropped them. There was nowhere to they weren't you couldn't target them anywhere. You couldn't do anything but open up the back of the plane and drop them out. Or if they're connected to the wings, you couldn't do anything but drop them. And, if you get within a kilometer and you got a nuclear bomb, who gives a crap? If you get it within a kilometer and you got 3,000 pound dumb bomb, which is what these are, you get a 3,000 pound, and that's basically the equivalent of 3,000 pounds of TNT. And so that's how they measure these. And Russia has these glide bombs now because they've taken the entire Soviet era stockpile, and they have these Fab 500s, Fab 1500s, Fab 3000s. Okay. And they haven't, and what they've done is they've taken these dumb bombs, which are just 3 foot, 4 foot long bombs, like you remember seeing in the cartoons that you would drop, that the Roadrunner, or that the Wile E. Coyote would attempt to drop on the Roadrunner, and they look just like that. And they've attached glide kits to them, and they are now gliding and programmable to their destinations. And they have an enormous impact on buildings, on infrastructure. These Fab 3000s, unbelievable. And the Fab 1500s are pretty badass too. And Russia has thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these that they refit with these glide kits, and these things go. And trust me, they're not losing. This does not signal the imminent collapse or a military collapse that is accelerating faster than anticipated. The destruction, and it acts like the entire strategic bomber fleet of Russia is gone. It not only undermines its long-range nuclear deterrence, but also sends shockwaves through the Kremlin's military planning. Well, I told you yesterday that the New START treaty requires those things to be in the open. Just another example of why you can't be in a treaty with the United States or with the deep state. They'll just ignore it, and ignore those things. And as Steve Bannon said, I believe Lindsey Graham knew. I believe he and that Blumenthal were there the night before. They were shown all of this. The pictures that are shown all over during the planning of this show aerial photography from satellite imagery that is certainly U.S. capable, U.S. grade. And the Ukrainians don't have any of that. That came from us. Came from the West somewhere. And so that's where the targeting came from. And the silence of the United States on this end is deafening. What this means is that they definitely knew that somebody told them what was going on, and they knew it was happening right before the negotiations. I guarantee you they probably didn't know about the blowing up of the bridges to attack people moving trains. And I doubt they knew about the new attack on the Crimean Bridge today. And so, drone war sucks for everybody. And Ukraine's losing their asses inside of Ukraine because of the same drone war. And Ukraine has zero air defense. But what has all this propaganda done? It has taken the focus away from the fact that Ukraine is losing. And they're not going to win. And so it is unfortunate for them that nobody is discussing this, but they ought to be. And saying what the truth really is all about here, because nobody is being truthful. Okay, let us finish this up. This is more than a battlefield success. It is a clear sign of Ukraine's growing dominance in asymmetric warfare and Russia's declining ability to project power. I don't understand the logic of this at all. These guys are not the sharpest crayons in the box. They're just not. And so it and yet people are listening to them and going, yeah, all over Ukraine. I'm reading all of these Ukrainian things that are just, yeah, we showed them. Well, when are you going to show them on the battlefield where you're losing ground daily? When are you going to drive them back out of Sumy like they drove you out of Kursk? When are you going to push them back out of Nikolaeva? You're not even out of Mykolaiva. And across that little part of the section of Mykolaiva, when are you going to kick them out of Dnepropetrovsk? That's not going to happen. And when are you gonna take back Zaporizhia? When are these things going to happen? It's not going to happen. And so it's unfortunate that here we are. I'm going to give you a couple of more positives. Here's a guy named positives for Ukraine anyway. Here's a guy, and if I would say things like this, I imagine I could get published on Kiev in Kiev Today. The title of the story is This the End for Putin? Written by Jake Bro, war commentator. Russia cannot win this war. Collapse is coming. In a powerful interview, national security expert Jake Bro joins Kiev Post to analyze the escalating internal fractures that threaten Vladimir Putin's grip on power. Yeah. Bro, a former U.S. Air Force nuclear and missile operations officer and one of the most followed commentators on the Russia-Ukraine war, outlines how economic strain, battlefield losses, and elite unrest are pushing Russia closer to collapse. Well, good luck with that theory. he can get people, and he's been saying this for a long time, right? He's been saying things like this forever. You can go back and listen to what he's saying, and for 3 years he's been putting it out that this is what's going to happen. The next one is by a lady named Katerina Zakharenchenko. One day ago, the Kremlin was brought to its knees. Russians react to Ukraine's devastating strikes. Spiderweb strikes cripple 34% of Russia's bomber fleet in a $7 billion blow, the security forces of Ukraine say. So remember what this is about. It's about propaganda and how you win. Now, what they don't want you to know, and also this is from the Kiev Post too, Russia claims that the Kiev regime is behind the rail blast that killed 7. I agree. I think they were too. It's pretty damn convenient that that these are getting blown up, and that Chuck Farrar, of course, is on there about that too. And let's see, I talked about the other successes that they have had. And so all of this propaganda is put out there so that Trump will give more money to Ukraine. That's what this, go follow the money. Okay? Follow the money and you will see where this is going. And I guarantee you this Farrar guy is getting paid by the U.S. government. Getting paid by the deep state for his opinions. I should switch mine and do just an experiment, switch my opinions and see if suddenly I get funding from somewhere. That'd be hilarious. But no, I got a tiny bit of pride. Okay. I say what I believe. I don't say what you want to hear, just because that's what you want to hear. And guys like this, Jason Smart and this Navy SEAL Chuck Farrar, I don't know how you say it. They will blow with the wind. They won't tell you the truth, that's for sure. And because I'd like to see where they get this, where they come to these conclusions. What factors, other than Ukraine was successful in one night, and I give kudos for that. I give it. That's good stuff. For them, it's good stuff. But what out of that, what because of that leads you to believe that Russia's collapsing, that Putin is done, that any of these things, I challenge them to put it out there. Apparently, another one says Russia is headed for revolution. As an economist, what's his name? He reveals the disturbing signs that a Russian revolution is coming. Well, a revolution in money, a revolution in economic growth. Where's ours? We're not. They're outpacing us. Isn't that terrible? 1 of every 5 people outside of outside of Russia. I heard this as a factor today. 1 of every 5 people outside of their own country is a Russian traveler. Heard that number today. In fact, think about that. That's a huge number. That all over the place, people are having to learn to speak Russian. I forget which country it was. I was in South America, and when you're driving down the road, you saw Russian road signs. That ought to alarm you. But they're everywhere. They are all over the place. And here's an article by a girl named Nadezhda Romanenko. The article is entitled, "Here's What They Don't Tell You About the, quote, massive Russian strikes on Ukraine." In the current media frenzy surrounding the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, A glaring double standard continues to distort public perception. The nature and impact of drone warfare. Western outlets, politicians, and NGOs are quick to pounce on Russia for retaliatory actions, yet remain eerily silent about Ukraine's increasingly reckless and escalatory drone campaign. Vladimir Zelensky said today that if you don't agree to a ceasefire, we're going to keep this up. They attempted to blow up the Crimean Bridge today, and we're going to keep this up. The only thing they have is this. This is all they got left in their quiver is drone warfare. That's it, and they got nothing. This selective outrage not only undermines serious dialogues on peace, it has shielded Ukraine from accountability as it wages what can only be described as a campaign of terror against Russian civilians, like the trains being blown up, like the beach that they attacked in Crimea on a Sunday afternoon when it was loaded with children and women swimming and enjoying their holidays in Crimea. 100 and something people dead, and you don't hear a word about it. Never heard a word about it in the West. Done by what? Ukrainian bombing with cluster rounds, the ones that have the most impact and shoot the most little portions out to tear bodies apart. They're anti-personnel weapons. That's what they fired on the beaches in Crimea a year and a half ago. Go check it out. Over the past few weeks, let's get to the subtitle here. Drone War Reality. Civilian targets are attacked in Russia. Over the past few weeks, Ukraine's use of drones has surged in frequency and in range. On a daily basis, dozens, sometimes hundreds, of drones are launched toward Russian territory, many targeting civilian infrastructure or flying indiscriminately toward dense urban centers like Moscow. While Russia's air defense systems have performed admirably in intercepting the majority of these threats, the falling debris poses an unavoidable risk to civilians, including children and the elderly. Russian regions far from the front lines have been forced into a state of constant vigilance. Air raid alerts disrupt the normalcy of everyday life. Now, granted, Ukraine's going through definitely the same thing on that end. What's most alarming is the strategic logic or lack thereof behind these strikes. Unlike military-grade precision operations, Ukraine's drone attacks are designed less to achieve tactical objectives and more to instill fear on the populace. The targets are often electrical substations, communication towers, or proximity to residential areas. They cannot be framed as collateral damage. It is a campaign whose effects are felt by civilians, not the military. Western silence and hypocrisy. Despite the escalating threat to Russian civilians, international reaction is resoundingly one-sided. No UN condemnation of Ukraine's drone strikes, no emergency meetings in Brussels, no CNN specials about children running into bomb shelters. Instead, the focus is singular. Russia's every response is dissected, denounced, and demonized. The same countries that cheer on Ukraine's technological advancement in warfare turn a blind eye to the human cost so long as the humans in question are Russian. This selective outrage creates a moral vacuum in which Ukraine is emboldened to continue its drone war with impunity. Zelensky, backed by his Western sponsors, is not held accountable for the reckless escalation he fuels. Worse still, his impunity undermines any real incentive for dialogue. Why negotiate when your side is never blamed? Russia has a measured response, and I agree with this completely. What is most striking in this dynamic is Russia's restraint. Despite the volume and severity of the attacks on its own territory, Moscow's drone strikes remain focused on disrupting military logistics and strategic assets within Ukraine, often near the front lines. Russia has refrained from matching Ukraine's willingness to launch indiscriminate aerial barrages deep into population centers. If anything, it has been using this period to demonstrate its commitment to diplomatic resolutions, responding from a defensive posture while signaling that its hand remains extended toward the peace table. They've been saying that for years. At some point, however, enough is enough. A nation cannot allow its citizens to be terrorized indefinitely while posturing for peace. The Kremlin has an obligation to protect its people. That means pushing back against these drone incursions with the seriousness they deserve. The path to peace and who is blocking it. Critics claim Russia's posture is inconsistent with its actions, but the facts tell a different story. Moscow remains open to dialogue. It is not demanding one-sided ultimatums, nor is it setting artificial deadlines as Western capitals do. Contrast this with the theatrics of Zelensky and his Washington-Brussels handlers, who have turned negotiation into a performative exercise rather than a serious effort to end the conflict. It is not Russia who walked away from Istanbul in 2022. It is not Russia who ignored the Minsk process when it became politically inconvenient. Russia enters any future negotiations not as a supplicant, but the state that has demonstrated both military strength and diplomatic maturity. It does so knowing full well that any peace must be just, balanced, and grounded in lessons of the past. Chief among those lessons, that appeasement and naivete only invite betrayal. Minsk I and Minsk II, by the way, that's what they're referring to, and many others, Budapest Agreement. There is indeed a stark difference between Ukraine's and Russia's drone strikes. One is a campaign of terror, reckless and civilian targeted, encouraged by Western silence. The other is reluctant defense carried out with discipline and restraint. If peace is to be achieved, it must begin with honesty about who is escalating, who is suffering, and who continues to act like a responsible power even while under attack. Until the world is ready to admit that, Russian civilians will rely on their nation to do what must be done, and rightly so. And I would add to that, and what their nation has a history of doing. You can agree or disagree. I don't care. I've brought you the Kiev point of view. That is obviously a Russian point of view. I'm not in the middle. I lean quite a bit towards the Russian point of view. And any reasonable person would. I remember I grew up really religious in a family that was quite religious. And one of the things I remember most from church is that as a kid, and this is probably one of the most basic truths on the planet. When something is wrong, you know it's wrong. Okay? You know it. You just know that that's not the way things ought to be. And I've always felt that regardless of who's screaming the loudest or talking the loudest. And I remember, you'd get in trouble for doing something, I don't know, or you punish one of your kids for doing something that they shouldn't have done. What are your first words to them? Well, that's wrong. You can't. My son Sam Jr., one of the funniest things he ever did that I was involved with was his teacher called me up and explained that Sam Jr., at about age 5, 6, kindergarten, first grade, don't remember, they were jumping on these little circular trampolines out in the playground or in the gym or wherever, and it was Sam's turn coming up. There was a little girl up there bouncing on the bouncing on the little round trampoline, and Sam's turn was there. So what did he do? It was his turn, and she was jumping. Mid-jump, he pulled it out from under, and she splatted on the ground, and he began jumping. Well, you say to Sam something like, Sam Jr., I mean, and I started laughing, of course, which I never should have done. They're like, you idiot, you can't condone what your son's doing. I said, well, number one, he's not on the phone with me. He's still in school. So hopefully he's not hearing me laughing. Number two, I'm not laughing that it's that I think it's right. I'm laughing because only Sam, only Sam. And Sam was a great kid, and he was funny as hell. And that was one of the funniest kids. I had so much fun raising that kid, I got to tell you. And he's still a good kid. I've generally good kids, But anyway, I digress, of course, just like always. And so that is the other side of the coin. From here we are claiming that I say Russia continues to hold the line, continue to hold steady, the exact same thing they've been doing for 3 years, that you continue to watch the front line in Ukraine move to the west, move to the south, in the Sumy region, in Zaporizhia, in Kherson, in Donetsk, Lugansk, Kharkov, everywhere. And if they don't watch out, they're going to end up losing Mykolaiv and Odessa. That is the Sam prediction. I know Russians. I know them pretty well. There is a difference between Russians and Ukrainians, and they're not the same people. And they're very closely related. Very closely related. But I think that Russians will... I know the word in Russian, I can't remember it, but they will endure. Endure is the word. They will endure a lot of hardship. They will endure a lot of hardship when they know that they are right. And all you got to do is look at the things that we, the West, have done for 20 years and who we are supporting and what exactly that means. Where, it's all about the money for people like Lindsey Graham. And when you realize that, you know what is right. And that's in your own heart. You know what's right and you know what's wrong. All right, we're going to move on to something kind of funny. We have a... Here's another one. This one, and it's a little bit long, but it's a good story. They are talking about Trump's passport to nowhere. Passport to nowhere. Team Trump's new deportation game show. Trump's new deportation game show. When you're a kid and your mom tells you to go clean your room, so you just shove everything under the bed and pray she doesn't look? That's the Trump administration's immigration strategy. Only instead of a bedroom, the mess is getting punted to countries like Ukraine, Libya, and El Salvador. We are working with other countries to say, we want to send you some of our most despicable human beings to your country. Will you do that as a favor to us? U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, and I remember watching him say it. And the further away, the better, so they can't come back across the border. It's just like a group chat where America just keeps forwarding spam to other nations. I love this article. I thought it was hilarious. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's freaking funny. And hey, if you're really trying to make sure someone doesn't come back, not to America or anywhere else for that matter, why not just send them to Ukraine? One day you're watching reruns of Friends in the Bronx, and the next you're personally starring in a Slavic war documentary with no subtitles. Apparently, some Trump officials thought this was a real bang-up of a plan. If Ukraine's military recruiters were getting tired of kidnapping guys off of park benches, surely they would appreciate the gift of some unwitting pre-owned conscripts. The Washington Post recently revealed that in January, shortly after Trump took office, the U.S. asked Ukraine to accept an unspecified number of U.S. deportees who are citizens of other countries. Ukraine shockingly, wasn't super into the idea, probably because their definition of foreign aid doesn't include serving Washington's one giant human recycling bin. Still, it would have solved two problems at once. Ukraine gets soldiers. The U.S. gets to declutter its immigration problem. No worries. With Ukraine being picky, there are other destinations for an all-expense-paid permanent vacation courtesy of Uncle Sam, like Libya, Saudi Arabia. Asked about immigrants being sent to Libya, Trump said, I don't know. You'll have to ask the Department of Homeland Security. He looked like a kid whose mom just looked under the bed and found a year's worth of dirty clothes. Asking DHS might be tricky, since Kristi Noem was last seen given a stern PSA in front of a Salvadoran mega prison while dressed like she was auditioning for Call of Duty. Do not come to our country illegally, she warned on March 26. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. Washington is paying El Salvador $6 million to hide part of America's mess from its voters. President Nayib Bukele is very upfront about the arrangement. We are willing to take in only convicted criminals, including convicted U.S. citizens, into our mega prison in exchange for a fee, he posted. Nothing says land of the free like outsourcing incarceration to the highest bidder. Libya, meanwhile, still hasn't recovered from being turned into an open-air dystopia after the West's 2011 Greatest Hits tour featuring regime change and chaos. Human trafficking is booming. Leadership is a mess. There's the government of national stability in the East and the government of national unity in the West, and various militias doing daily interpretive dance performance with Kalashnikovs. This is just funny. I'm sharing this with you because it is funny and well written. I don't necessarily agree, but all insist that they have never agreed to take Washington's deportees from places like Vietnam, Laos, or the Philippines. So what's the game plan anyway? We just drop people off in the middle of the desert and hope that no one noticed, like it was Survivor North Africa? The State Department's own travel advisory warns, do not travel to Libya due to crime, terrorism, unexplored landmines, civil unrest, kidnapping, and armed conflict. Having U.S. citizenship does not guarantee fair treatment of foreigners, the advisory states. So what you're saying is that it's an ideal place to send folks who can't sue if something goes wrong. At one point, a U.S. judge had to block military aircraft that were gearing up to taxi with a batch of deportees en route to Libya. Legal red tape might be slow, but you know what's faster than a judge's order? That military plane's engine at full throttle. And then there's Saudi Arabia, because why not build your immigration policy like an awkward wedding seating chart? Latin Americans to El Salvador, Asians to Libya, Arabs to Saudi Arabia. To be fair, it's not just the U.S. tossing migrants around like political hot potatoes. The entire West has been full-blown existential crisis since right-wing populism started to threaten elections in blowback against decades of lax migration. Even Canada is having second thoughts. Newly elected Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is trying to cut back on permanent residents from 500,000 to just over 350,000 a year, and he knows full well that isn't nearly enough of a cut. Last year, Germany flirted with the same genius idea as Britain. Send asylum seekers to Rwanda. And why Rwanda? Because the Brits already built the facility there, and Germany figured they could just Airbnb it. The only hiccup, German law doesn't let you deport people to a country they've never set foot in. Also, there's the tiny matter of the Geneva Convention and those pesky historical vibes of mass deportation schemes in Germany during the Second World War. But that minor detail doesn't prevent Wanda from still being on the table for U.S. deportation. What a mess the West has made for itself by prioritizing virtue signaling over self-preservation. And what is the end result? Don't call it dystopian foreign policy, just a pan-continental escape room. I love that article, and I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty well done. Who wrote that one? I meant to say that before. Rachel Marsden. Yes, that was a good one. I like it a lot. Where else did I want to go? There's a Macron article. We're going to skip that one for a minute. Here's the elite Western universities form a corrupt, parasitic empire. Instead of a high-quality education, these institutions are fostering a global neo-feudal system. Not a bad article. This one, we're gonna head back to Ukraine for just a freaking minute, if you don't mind. We're gonna do it. And what are we gonna talk about with Ukraine? This one will be entertaining. Truce or trap? Ukraine makes sure the peace talks go nowhere, and that's absolutely true. On Sunday, Russian regions of Bryansk and Kursk, both bordering Ukraine, had bridges collapse on and under trains, killing 7 and injuring dozens of civilians. These were no accident and were no extraordinary force of nature. Instead, it is certain that these catastrophes were acts of sabotage, which is also how the Russian authorities are classifying them. Since it is virtually certain that the perpetrators acted on behalf of Kiev, Western media have hardly reported the attacks at all. Moscow, meanwhile, considers them acts of terrorism. On the same day, Ukraine carried out a wave of drone attacks on important military airfields. That story, trumpeted as a great success by Ukraine's SBU intelligence service, has been touted in the West. The usual die-hard Western, long starved of good news, have pounced on Ukraine's probably exaggerated account of these assaults to fantasize once more about how Ukraine has genius while Russia is vulnerable and nearly defeated. Despair makes imaginative in the wrong way. The reality of Ukraine's strikes on the airfields is not entirely clear. What is certain is that Ukraine targeted locations in 5 regions, North and Central Russia, Siberia, and the Far East. The drone swarms were launched not from Ukraine, but from inside of Russia, using subterfuge and civilian trucks. Under international humanitarian war, the law of armed conflict, this constitutes not a legitimate ruse of war, but a war crime of obvious point somehow never mentioned in Western commentary. Yet at least in this instance, the targets were military. This was either an act of special ops sabotage involving a war crime, the most generous possible reading, or plain terrorism, or both, depending on the point of view. 3 of the attacked air bases successfully fended off Ukraine first-person view kamikaze drones. In 2 locations, enough drones got through to cause substantial damage. Ukraine officials, and therefore Western mainstream media, claim that more than 40 aircraft were destroyed, including large strategic bombers and early warning aircraft. Official Russian sources have admitted losses but not detailed them. Russian military bloggers, who are rather well informed, quote much lower figures in the single digits, while noting that they are still constitute a tragic loss, especially because Russia does not make these type of aircraft anymore. In financial terms, Ukraine officials claim that they inflicted the equivalent of $2 billion in damage, at least. Even if it should turn out that they have been less effective than that, there can be little doubt that on this occasion, Kiev achieved a lot of bang for the buck. Even if Operation Spiderweb took a long time to prepare and involved various resources, including warehouses, trucks, and cheap drones, it is certain that Kiev's expenses were much less than Moscow's losses. In political terms, Russia's vibrant social media-based sphere of military political commentators, and they're everywhere on Telegram, by the way, has revealed a sense of appalled shock and anger, not only at Kiev, but also at Russian officials and officers accused of not taking seriously the threat of Ukraine strikes deep inside of Russia. One important Telegram blogger let his readers know that he would welcome dismissals among Air Force Command. Somebody has to pay for it, right? But he also felt that weak spots exploited by Kiev's sneak drone attack have systemic reasons. Another very popular mill blogger has called it criminal negligence to not have the airfields protected. And whatever the eventual Russian political fallout of the attacks, beware of Western commentators' incorrigible tendency to overestimate. German newspaper Weite, for instance, is hyperventilating about the attack's monumental significance. I read to you a couple earlier that say this means it's the end of the war. This means that the collapse is imminent, as those morons stated. The SEAL Team 6, dude. Well, you stick with blowing crap up on your own, buddy. You know, go on your little secret mission somewhere and blow crap up. This doesn't mean it's to collapse the entire military of Russia. Nonsense. In reality, with all the frustration inside of Russia, this incident will not shake the government or even dent its ability to wage the war. All correct. Probably its real net effect will be to support mobilization of Russia. Remember the Wagner revolt that saw exactly the same Western commentators predicting the imminent implosion not merely of the Russian government, but the whole country. You don't remember that? Exactly. In the case of the terrorist attacks on civilian trains, the consequences are even easier to predict. They will definitely only harden Moscow's resolve, and that of most Russians, elite and ordinary. With both types of attacks on the military airfields and on civilian trains, the same puzzling question arises. This is the question of Sam right here. What is Kiev even trying to accomplish here? I've told you that I think it's more money to get Trump to give him more money. Lindsey Graham can go and say they're winning, and that's exactly what he's doing. He can all of his little puppets come out and say that Ukraine's winning. They're not winning, friends and neighbors, even if they had serious losses of money, at least on the Russian side. At this point, we can only speculate what Kiev was trying to accomplish. My guess, and this is the article of the guy who's writing, I already told you what my thought was. Kiev's rather desperate regime is after four things. Number one, propaganda success for domestic consumption inside of Ukraine. Given that Zelensky's Ukraine is a de facto authoritarian state with an obedient media, this may work for a moment. Until that is, the tragedy of mobilization, all too often focused on a losing proxy war on behalf of a demented West, sinks in again. That is, in a few days. They'll figure it out. Second, with its combination of atrocities against civilians and an assault on Russia's nuclear defenses, this is Kiev's umpteenth attempt to provoke Russia into a response so harsh that it will escalate the war to a direct clash between NATO, now probably minus the US, and Russia. This is a Ukrainian tactic as old as the war, if not older. Call it the attack's routine aspect. Equally routinely, that plan has gone nowhere. I happen to agree with that too. Then there's the attempt to torpedo the second round of the revived Istanbul talks scheduled for Monday to June by provoking Russia to cancel or launch a rapid and fierce retaliation strike. And Kiev could have used that strike as a pretext to do the same thing. That is, as it were, the tactical dimension, and it also failed. While the above is devious, it's also standard. States will be states. The fourth likely purpose of Kiev's wave of sabotage and terror, the strategic aspect, as it were, however, much more disturbing. The Zelensky regime and some of its Western backers, my guess is Britain is in the lead, are signaling that they are ready to wage a prolonged campaign of escalating terror attacks inside of Russia, even if the fighting in Ukraine should end. Think of the Chechen wars, but much worse. This too will not succeed. One lesson of the Chechen wars is precisely that Moscow has made up its mind not to bend to terrorism, but instead to eliminate its source, whatever the cost. Those words I want Americans to get used to. The whatever the cost, we're not ready for a whatever the cost for Ukraine. We're not ready for it, which means they're not getting it, and they can't afford the cost. So if we dumped them, this war's over. That's all there is to it. And there's zero we want. I mean, why is Russia our enemy? Nobody's ever said that. Nobody's ever put it out there. Putin's an evil dictator. Well, what the hell do you think Vladimir Zelensky is? Good question, huh? Reading those Istanbul talks, they have taken place. Ukraine was not able to make Russia abandon them. Otherwise, the results of the second round of the second attempt at peace in Istanbul seems to have been very modest, as many observers predicted, including me. Kiev, while losing, did its usual grimly comedic thing and offered Moscow a chance to surrender. Moscow handed over its terms in turn, and they have not changed and reflect that it is winning the war. Kiev has promised to study them. They won't. Given that the gap between Ukrainian delusions and Russian demands are unbridgeable at this point, even a large-scale ceasefire is out of reach. We talked about that yesterday. And that may be, after all, what both the Zelensky regime and its European backers want. As far as Moscow, it has long made clear that it will fight until it reaches its war aims. In that sense, the new talks confirmed that what the attacks had signaled already. Peace is not in sight. Russia's chief negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, did, however, offer smaller local ceasefires of 2 to 3 days that he explained would serve to retrieve the bodies of the fallen for a decent burial. In the same spirit, Russia has committed to hand over 6,000 bodies of Ukrainian soldiers and officers. There was something for the living as well. More prisoner exchanges for those severely ill or injured, as well as for the young. They have been agreed upon. Figures are not clear, but the fact that they will take place on an all-for-all basis reflects Russia's gesture of goodwill. That was my question last week when we talked, whether or not any other prisoner swaps, because some people calculate. I've heard various numbers. Even today, I heard new numbers, but there are some numbers that say that Russia's holding up to 9,000 Ukrainian soldiers, and that Ukraine has, after the last swap of 1,000, that they have less than 800. And if Russia is willing to do an all for all of everybody under age 25, and Russia is going to get back all of the prisoners of war held in Ukraine, and Ukraine will get a good number of them, and it'll probably be higher than the number going to Russia, especially if they release everybody of a certain age or less. So finally, Medinsky also revealed that the Ukrainian side handed over a list of 339 children that Russia evacuated from the war zone. He promised that, as in previous cases, Russian officials will trace them and do the best to return these children to Ukraine. Medinsky pointed out that the number of children on Kiev's list massively contradicts Ukrainian and Western stories, as well as lawfare, about an immense genocidal Russian kidnapping operation. In that sense, the talks at least help to deflate an old piece of Western information war. Perhaps that is all that is possible for now. Truly incremental humanitarian progress and a very gradual, very slow working toward a more reasonable manner of talking to each other. Better than nothing, but that is a low bar, admittedly. I agree with literally 90% of that. Ukraine does not want peace, not remotely, and they are not interested in it. They haven't deviated even slightly, even though they're losing. And it'd be different if they could do it on their own, but they can't. Their only game is to suck other people into it by turning Vladimir Putin into the demon. Well, if you hadn't have done that in the first place, you wouldn't be here. If the U.S. hadn't treated Russia like an enemy from the very beginning and attempted to build up a NATO-style arms all over the place, and even in the Black Sea with the British, there was that article I talked to you about yesterday of the guy talking about giving nuclear weapons to Ukraine so that Britain could still hold the Black Sea and be able to use it. That's what this has all been about. There was a funny story, and again, switching topics, that I wanted to share. And I watched the video, and you can't see it, but man, this dude's huge. A wild elephant today. And if you can find this, it's wow, the video is amazing. And I think I'll put the video out on my, if I can find it again, put the video out on my, oh, it's gone. It won't let me have it. I wonder if I got to get on through a VPN to get it. But in the title of the story, it's real short. Wild elephant visits a Thai grocery store. A 4-ton animal known locally for raiding nearby settlements was caught helping itself to snacks. And these pictures even are crazy. A giant wild elephant from a national park in northeastern Thailand wandered off and strolled into a grocery store, knocking over shelves and sniffing boxes of rice crackers before leaving. The daylight robbery went viral after the Thai Wrath Online Facebook page posted a video on Monday afternoon showing a massive creature reportedly known locally as Plai Byang Lek, shocking the convenience store owner in the Pak Chong district by invading the premises and helping itself to snacks. The store, which is around 3 hours northeast of Bangkok, is near Khao Yai National Park, where wild elephants are frequently seen leaving protected areas in search of food. The publication said this is not Lek's first mischievous act. 2 years ago, he famously made off with a pot of congee, a type of rice porridge. The 23-year-old male elephant entered the store while the owner was attending to a customer, the Bangkok Post reported, adding that the visit caused panic and forced the shopkeeper and the customer to run out and alert park officials. I didn't run out too. I liked the video. It was pretty comical, but you'll have to find it yourself because the link says snap when I tried to click on it. Park rangers and the shop owner tried to make the animal leave by shouting and pleading with him, the media outlet noted, but the elephant was unfazed and continued probing with his trunk, searching the shelves for snacks. 10 minutes later, he left and wandered back into the jungle, didn't cause any injuries to himself or bystanders. According to the shop owner, as cited by the Bangkok Post, repairing the damaged shelves and replacing the lost goods will cost more than 1,000 baht, B-A-H-T. That's the Thai currency. And 1,000 baht is around $30. So pretty cheap for an elephant wandering through your store and busting crap up, huh? I just thought that was pretty comical, so I left it in there. I don't want to read about Western universities. I already kind of summarized it. Let's see. And this is coming from the East. And remember when I tell you that sanctions are hurting the West and are not hurting Russia. And Russia's economy, which was supposed to be destroyed by sanctions, grew at 4.8 last year, and it's projected to go higher this year. So they take great pleasure in talking about our economy. U.S. growth is set to slump from 2.8% in 2024 to 1.6% this year, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And I've read the report. It talks about Trump's tariff war, now they're calling it Trump's sanction war. And I like what he's doing. You know, I don't mind the tariff wars. I think long term it helps out. I don't like how it came to be, and I've been pretty upfront about that, about how I feel about that part. And I think if he'd have done it quietly, it probably would have had a better impact than what it has, and people wouldn't have gone all over trying to blast him like they have. What else do we have? This was a major strike, took place on June the 3rd, which, by the way, this is my mother's birthday. Happy birthday to my mother. And yesterday was an ex-wife's birthday, my favorite ex-wife. Her birthday was yesterday. And happy birthday to her. Happy birthday to my mother. And somebody's birthday is tomorrow. Somebody's birthday was on the 1st. Well, when you have a family with, my mom's got 80-something, 90-something great-grandkids and 60-something grandkids. I don't remember. She's got butt tons of relatives. And so if she got a dollar, or she got $10 from all of us, it'd give her that'd be a pretty good Christmas present. Everybody toss mom $10 through Cash App or something, will you? Let's go back to the war for a second. Russia strikes a Ukrainian drone production facility. A total of 142 military targets were hit last night. Russian forces launched a combined strike targeting Ukrainian drone and radar manufacturing facilities, as well as munition depots and equipment storage sites, the Defense Ministry in Moscow said in its daily briefing. The list of targets reportedly included drone storage facilities and launch sites, positions of Ukrainian troops, and foreign mercenaries. They claim that this strike took out 1,500 men. 1,500 soldiers a day are still dying over there on the front lines. The strikes come 2 days after Ukrainian attack on military airfield that we've already talked about. Russian Defense Ministry confirmed those attacks. This statement comes as Russian forces continue their offensive operations along the entire front. And if you watch those maps, go out to YouTube if you get a chance. And look for those time-lapsed maps, okay? And some of them go back the entire war from the very beginning when Russia came in and seized a ton of territory, and then they backed off voluntarily during the Istanbul discussions in April of 2022. Nobody drove them back. They pulled back. They weren't after a takeover of Ukraine. Part of me wishes that they hadn't been. They were a little bit naive in that. But anyway, we can talk about that another time. Over the past 24 hours, the Russian military took control of a village called Andreevka in Sumy, according to the briefing. Ukrainian forces have lost over 1,500 soldiers across various parts of the front and 24 artillery pieces. In late May, President Putin announced Moscow's intention to create a security buffer zone along the border, following the successful repulsion of Ukrainian incursion into Kursk. He first floated the idea last year, stating it was intended to protect civilians from Kiev's long-range strikes. Russia has repeatedly accused Ukraine of carrying out attacks on civilians, organizing sabotage operations, and plotting assassinations. Did you hear at all? Did anybody say this in the West at all? That Putin's presidential helicopter was attacked with up to 25 drones, and he had to be carted out, taken out of harm's way. This was May 31st, June 1st, something like that, not too long ago. Russia, blah, blah, blah. Assassination of senior officials, journalists, and public figures. Recent acts of railway sabotage in Bryansk and Kursk were labeled terrorist attacks planned by Ukraine to cause maximum civilian casualty. Crazy stuff. What else do we got? I wanted to get to the story. Where's Angelina Verbach? We got to talk to her again because she's, they call her Angelina 360 Verbach because she famously, as the prime minister, was she prime minister of Germany? I forget what she was. We got to find this article because she's nuts. And she's going to be the leader. Damn it. Where is it? I got nothing. Where's Verbach? Man, I've lost my... I deleted it. Well, that's too bad. Damn it. I wanted to put that in there. If you get a chance, I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. Angelina 360 Verbach. They call her Angelina 360 Verbach because she's the one that said if Vladimir Putin did not this was at the start of the war, that if Vladimir Putin didn't make a 360-degree change, then they were going to issue more sanctions and come after. Well, 360 degrees takes you all the way around in a circle. So we'd still be facing the same direction. So, and some people don't know how to pull a 180. They can only pull a 360. And Angelina 360 Verbach is one of them. And she is going to be the new leader. Man, I wish I could find that article because it was pretty comical. But I got nothing. And I think I'm spelling her name wrong, so I can't find it. I think I am going to go through this. One more on the Ukraine issue. Trump is underinformed on Ukrainian strikes against Russian civilian population. Now, this came out last week, this article, but I haven't shared it all with you. And I agree with this almost in its entirety. President Trump is apparently unaware of Ukrainian terrorist attacks on Russian civilians that prompted retaliation from Moscow, says Yuri Ushakov, top foreign policy advisor to Vladimir Putin. Trump rebuked Moscow twice over its own strikes in Ukraine, claiming that Putin has gone crazy. He fires missiles and drones into cities for no reason whatsoever, and he's playing with fire. How come we haven't heard a word from Trump about this recently? Nothing. In an interview released on Wednesday, Ushakov told journalist Pavel Zarubin that the Kremlin is aware of Trump's criticism, but suggests that the president is not sufficiently informed about what is really happening in the context of the Russia-Ukraine confrontation. How can you not agree with that proposition? Nobody is telling him the truth, in my humble opinion. Trump only knows what retaliatory measures the Russians are taking, he said, stressing that Russia's strikes are only military infrastructure and defense facilities. Ukraine has drastically ramped up drone strikes into Russia in recent weeks in what Moscow says is an effort to derail the peace process. I gave you this number last week. Last week, Ukraine sent over 2,300 drones into Russia. Why? If they use those drones to repel the Russians on the ground, perhaps they could save some of their territory. But they don't get any propaganda value out of that, do they? They don't get any fear of the Russians or of the Russian population out of that. I remember yesterday I shared with you that poll that was talking about what the Russians would like to do, and that there were even 5 to 10% that thought that nuclear would be appropriate now I don't. I'm definitely not one of those, and that the various ranges. I think that something will happen. But some of the comments on that article that I just read to you, like, listen to this one. This article is not true. Trump knows that Ukraine has increased drone attacks into Moscow because the U.S. is providing intelligence and the targets for the Ukrainians. Either Russia is fooling itself or pretending that the U.S. has nothing to do with the war. We all know who started this war and who is still fueling it, beside all pretense of peace and being a deal maker. Please don't fool yourselves. And most of the commentary is in that vein. Trump is playing dumb when he knows full well that Ukraine is attacking Russia. Trump is ignorant of his downfall and legacy of lying to the American public. Now, I don't agree with any of that, but I agree that he's not being given information. Trump is going to be shooting himself in the foot. He is doing a good job of finishing himself off already. And that is because he is doing nothing about this war. Remember, he was going to be the one to end it. And everybody knows how to end it. Everybody of even slight intelligence knows how to end the war. Capitulate. Be done with it. You lost those 4 territories. Did you notice one of the things that changed in that proposition, that proposal that Russia delivered yesterday? One of the things that changed was not mere possession of the territories that Russia already has. This was not in the 2022 Istanbul Agreement that was so famously destroyed by Bojo Boris Johnson. This one is it's pretty simple. It has only the three sections that I read for you yesterday, each one with a number of paragraphs, but pretty simple, easy read. And one of the first ones says, get out of the places that have already said they are part of Russia. And now the change of that is the UN has to recognize them. It has to be recognized by the UN that is Russian territory. That has changed, and I didn't notice that when it was in there. I thought it was exactly the same, but someone else pointed out in one of the things that I shows I saw in prep for today, suggested that, and I went back and looked, that is different. That now they're wanting those lands stated as Russian territory. And I read an interesting article, which I can't find either. I didn't save it. That talked about, and it was Jeffrey Sachs said, 78 days in a row, NATO and the U.S. inside of Europe bombed Kosovo, and none of us paid any attention to it. They bombed Kosovo. They destroyed a country that had existed on its own. Why? Because that region wanted to separate and be a separate country. So the U.S. goes in there with NATO. Everybody remembers that. I almost got orders to there when I was in the military. I almost got sent there. That was 20 years ago. And I was offered the position to go there and participate. I don't want to, there's, Eastern Europeans there. At that time, still quite a few Russians over there. And, but I was going to go over, like, for who knows what purposes. I don't know. I said, no, not interested. And I was in law school anyway. But the fact is that we bombed them for 78 days, installed our own government, and called Kosovo a free country. It wasn't. It was not a different country. And but we made it an independent country. How? Bombed the hell out of it. 78 straight days. We bombed it. And for what purpose? Territorial integrity? What happened to the argument of territorial integrity guaranteed under the UN Charter, right? Watch Jeffrey Sachs on that one. That was kind of interesting and a very well done YouTube, which I can't find off the top of my head. But let's see. I think we've done enough. Apparently, Germany has a lot of interesting things going on. Germany should expel, according to its senior MP, should expel all Russian diplomats. The Russia House, a cultural and linguistic center in Berlin, should also be shut down, said Roderick Kieswetter. Senior German lawmaker has called on Berlin to cut diplomatic ties with Moscow to combat hybrid threats he says come from Russia. We should expel any remaining diplomats. He has a hardline anti-Russia stance. According to Kieswetter, Germany is currently inadequately protected against cyber attacks, which he claims originate from Russia. He specifically accused Moscow of attempting to change public opinion in Germany. Remember this Russian disinformation stuff. The list of countermeasures suggested includes establishing a special government agency to refute disinformation or combat it through hybrid activities like banning Russian tourists and journalists from entering Germany and shutting down their propagandal portals and deleting any social media accounts deemed suspicious by authorities. Isn't that crazy? Oh, Rostrudnichество blasted Kieswetter's words as absurd. They have nothing to do with reality, said the agency spokesman, said that the MP knows nothing about activities of the Russian House in Berlin and has never even been there. Interesting times these, ladles and jelly spoons. I very much appreciate your support and listening to the show. Remember, you can always listen to the show at internationalflavor.com and listen to all old podcasts. You can go to damradio.com/podcasts and listen to my shows as well as many other of our fabulous hosts that also have shows. I appreciate your listening to us, and I hope that you do so every single night. And we will then be happy to have you on the show this Thursday. My brother's, I forgot. Tomorrow is the biggest day in radio. The schedule is incredible. We've got a Wednesday coming up tomorrow. Do we not? It's a Wednesday. It starts with the damn swag. It then goes to the Gabby Hayes Show, A Really Big Shoe, the Ike Skelton Radio Show, and International Flavor with who? Samuel Trapp. That's me. And all of the rest will be there tomorrow. Is the biggest day in radio. Thank you for joining in tonight. Hope to see you tomorrow.